The Simpsons has predicted Trump's presidency, smartwatches, FaceTime, the Ebola outbreak, and even a scientific equation that wouldn't be proven for 14 years. Some call it luck, some call it coincidence. But when you analyze every prediction, you realize they're not all the same. They operate on different levels. And by level 7, we're way past coincidence. Let's break down exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. Level 1, trend extrapolation, smartwatches. In Lisa's Wedding from 1995, we see video calling watches. 18 years before the Apple Watch existed, The Simpsons showed people wearing computers on their wrists that make video calls. Impressive, right? Except smartwatches were already being theorized in the 90s. Dick Tracy had them in 1946. Tech magazines were predicting wearable computing. The Simpsons didn't predict the future. They predicted what tech enthusiasts were already talking about. Level 1 predictions are trend extrapolation, taking existing technology and imagining the obvious next step. Video phones existed. Miniaturization was accelerating. Putting them together on a wrist wasn't prophecy. It was educated guessing. But here's why it matters. The Simpsons got the details right. The casual integration into daily life. The exact form factor that would become standard. They didn't just predict smartwatches. They predicted how we'd actually use them. And that accuracy suggests something deeper than guessing. Level 2. Cultural satire becoming reality. President Trump. The episode Bart to the Future from 2000 shows Lisa as president, inheriting a budget crisis from President Trump. 16 years before it happened, they called it. Except Trump had been floating presidential runs since 1987. He ran in 2000 on the Reform Party ticket, the same year this episode aired. The Simpsons weren't predicting an impossible future. They were satirizing a current event that seemed absurd enough to be funny. Level 2 predictions are satire becoming reality. The joke is that something ridiculous happens. Then it actually happens, and suddenly the satire looks like prophecy. But the show wasn't predicting Trump would win. They were mocking the fact that he kept trying. What makes this level disturbing isn't the prediction. It's that reality became so absurd that satire couldn't keep up. The Simpsons wrote jokes about impossible scenarios, and then those scenarios stopped being impossible. They didn't predict the future. The future bent toward their satire. Level 3. Specific detail accuracy. The Siegfried and Roy tiger attack. In Springfield, Homer visits a casino where tiger trainers get mauled. The scene shows white tigers attacking their handlers in graphic detail. This aired in 1993. 10 years later, Roy Horn was mauled by a white tiger during a Siegfried and Roy show. Same white tiger, same type of attack, same profession. This isn't trend extrapolation. Tiger attacks weren't a cultural conversation in 1993. This is specific detail accuracy, getting not just the concept right, but the exact circumstances. White tigers, famous magicians, Las Vegas setting, the attack itself. Level 3 predictions are where coincidence starts feeling uncomfortable, because how do you accidentally nail details that specific? How do you satirize something obscure and then watch it manifest exactly as depicted years later? The math starts breaking down. The probability starts approaching impossible. Level 4. Technology before invention. FaceTime. In Lisa's Wedding, the same 1995 episode with smartwatches, we see video phone booths. But look closer. The interface, the screen layout, the way people hold the device, the casual integration of video calling as a replacement for voice calls. This aired 6 years before the first consumer webcams became standard, 14 years before FaceTime, 16 years before Skype video became universal. The Simpsons didn't just predict video calling. They predicted the exact social behavior around it, how people would use it, how it would replace phone calls, the casual acceptance of being on camera. Level 4 predictions are technology before invention, not guessing that something will exist, but knowing how it will function, understanding the user behavior before the technology exists to create that behavior. This isn't extrapolation anymore. This is blueprint. And here's what makes it impossible. The Simpsons got it wrong in 1995. Video phones had existed for decades and failed every time because people didn't want to be on camera. Every expert said video calling would never be mainstream. The Simpsons predicted not just the technology, but the cultural shift that would make people accept it. How? Level 5. Event-specific prophecy. The Ebola outbreak. Lisa Sachs from 1997 shows Marge offering a book to Bart titled Curious George and the Ebola Virus. A joke, a throwaway sight gag. Then, 17 years later, The 2014 Ebola outbreak becomes global news, the largest Ebola epidemic in history, but it gets worse. The book in the episode is clearly labeled with Ebola. The show didn't predict a general pandemic. It predicted this specific disease would become headline news. A disease that had been mostly contained in Central Africa for decades. A disease that had no indication it would become a worldwide concern. Level 5 predictions are event-specific prophecy, not predicting that pandemics exist, but naming the exact pathogen years before it matters. This isn't satire. This isn't extrapolation. This is foresight that shouldn't be possible. And the show does this repeatedly. Greece's debt crisis, Disney buying Fox, FIFA corruption scandal. Each time, specific events years before they happen, the pattern stops being coincidence and starts being something else. Level 6, mathematical impossibility, the Higgs boson equation. In The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace from 1998, Homer writes an equation on a chalkboard. 14 years later, scientists announced the discovery of the Higgs boson particle. And when physicists analyzed Homer's equation, they realized it predicted the mass of the Higgs boson years before the particle was discovered. The equation is real. Physicist Dr. Simon Singh confirmed it. The math actually works. And it appeared in a cartoon 14 years before the discovery it predicts. Level 6 predictions are mathematical impossibility. This isn't guessing. This isn't cultural observation. This is scientific knowledge that didn't exist when the episode aired. The Higgs boson wasn't discovered until 2012. Homer's equation predicted its mass in 1998. The show's writing staff includes multiple mathematicians and physicists. They had the knowledge to write complex equations, but they didn't have knowledge of future discoveries. Nobody did. The particle hadn't been found yet, so how did the equation get on that chalkboard? How did a joke in a cartoon contain real predictive science? Level 7, perfect detail manifestation, the Capitol riot. The Simpsons movie poster from 2007 shows an angry mob storming the Capitol building. The composition, the architecture, the chaos. 14 years later, January 6, 2021, the images match, not vaguely, not approximately, the exact visual of civilians storming the Capitol. But it goes deeper. Multiple Simpsons episodes showed political violence, government buildings under siege, American democracy collapsing. Camp Krusty showed children revolting. Mr. Lisa Goes to Washington showed government corruption. Bart Mangled Banner showed American flags and protest imagery. Level 7 predictions are perfect detail manifestation. The exact image appearing in reality, exactly as drawn. Not the concept, not the general idea. The precise visual composition, the specific architecture, the identical energy. This is where prediction becomes something else entirely. Because The Simpsons didn't just predict these events, they created the template, the visual language, the symbolic framework that reality later copied. As if the show isn't predicting the future is imitating the show. And once you see all 7 levels, the question stops being, how does The Simpsons predict the future? And becomes, why does the future keep copying The Simpsons? The 7 levels aren't about lucky guesses anymore. They're about a pattern that's too consistent, too specific, too accurate to be coincidence. Trend extrapolation becomes satire. Becoming reality becomes specific details, becomes technology. Blueprints becomes event prophecy, becomes scientific impossibility, becomes perfect visual manifestation. We're not watching a show that predicts the future. We're watching the future arrange itself to match a show. And nobody knows why. Nobody can explain how a cartoon from the 90s became a predictor of technology, politics, pandemics, and scientific discoveries. The Simpsons didn't just get lucky. They got lucky hundreds of times, across decades, across different writers, across impossibly specific details that shouldn't have been predictable. Either they have the best research team in television history, or they have access to something they're not supposed to have. Either they're incredibly observant about trend patterns, or they're receiving information from somewhere else. Either they're satirizing current events that later become real, or they're programming reality by creating the template it follows. The 7 levels aren't a theory, they're evidence that something about The Simpsons breaks the rules of causality, that somehow, impossibly, the show knows things before they happen, and continues knowing, and continues being right. And the most disturbing part, they're still making predictions, still putting impossibly specific details into current episodes, still showing events that haven't happened yet but probably will, which means somewhere in recent Simpsons episodes, hidden in throwaway sight gags and background jokes, are blueprints for future events, technologies that don't exist yet, disasters that haven't happened, political shifts that seem impossible today but will be history tomorrow. The predictions never stopped. We just haven't lived long enough to see which ones come true true next. Until then, we watch, we catalog, we try to understand how a cartoon became prophetic, how satire became instruction manual, how jokes became warnings. The 7 levels of Simpsons predictions aren't about what they got right, they're about what they're still getting right. What they're showing us right now that we won't understand for years. And when those predictions come true, when the impossible becomes inevitable, we'll look back at these episodes and wonder how we didn't see it coming, how we didn't realize we were being warned.